Everyone has heard of the man named Malcolm X, but no one told you of the horrors of his childhood and what America did to him as a child. I'm going to tell you what this country did to create the man, Malcolm X. No child should ever have to see the things the little boy Malcolm Little saw. The devastation brought on Malcolm and his family is the shame of America. You see, Malcolm was still in his mother's womb when one night in 1925, hooded Ku Klux Klanmen galloped around his family's home in Omaha, Nebraska, shooting off their guns and smashing the windows of his family's home. It was a get-out-of-town message for Malcolm's father, Earl Little, who happened to be out of town when the KKK terrified Malcolm's pregnant mother, Louise. Yes, she was pregnant with Malcolm at the time, and she had 3 other children in the home when the Klan came after them. Now, from the very beginning, from the womb, Malcolm faced horror while still in the womb. You see, Malcolm's dad was the Midwest organizer for the Universal Negro Improvement Association, and that was founded by Marcus Garvey of Jamaica. Marcus Garvey promoted black unity, black pride, and a love for Africa, and these were ideas that many whites found to be threatening. But one night, when Malcolm was only 3 years old, on a cold November night, black-robed terrorists torched his family's home and burned it to the ground. His family lost everything. And all this took place in, of all places, Lansing, Michigan. The only thing the family didn't lose was their lives. This must have been devastating for young Malcolm. His anger must have been so great. His family had to move to the outskirts of East Lansing because they were now destitute. Then again, horror struck the family. This time, Malcolm was only 6 years old when he was woke in the middle of the night by his mother's screams. On a late September night, Malcolm's mom, Mrs. Little, had just been told that her husband, Malcolm's daddy, had been ran over by a streetcar. A Charlie car crushed his dad's head and almost tore his body in two. Now, the authorities called it an accident, of course, but Malcolm would forever believe that his father had been murdered by the same type of people who terrorized his family many times before. Young Malcolm did what he could to help his mother and siblings after his father's murder. He tried fishing, hunting rabbits, sometimes pinching food from the grocery store. He even tried to learn the skill of boxing to make money. But by now, Malcolm's mother had been through so much that the strain took its toll and she lost her mind. Between the Klan attacks, their home being torched and burnt to the ground, the Klan and the people with the Klan coming after them, her husband being murdered, well, she was committed to a mental institution, and Malcolm and his siblings were put into foster care. Of course, Malcolm began to act out in school. He began getting into trouble, so they put him in juvenile home. But what child who had been traumatized as Malcolm had been traumatized, what child wouldn't act out? What anger, what devastation Malcolm must have felt, believing the system was for others but not for him, disappointed in the America that he was taught to love in school. But Malcolm didn't want to be bad. He wanted to be good. He even had dreams for himself. You see, Malcolm dreamed of being a lawyer. At least that's what he told his 8th grade teacher. His 8th grade teacher was his English teacher and Malcolm's favorite, named Mr. Ostrowski. When Malcolm told his favorite teacher his dream of being a lawyer, his teacher responded by saying, "We all like you, Malcolm, but you have to be realistic about being a nigger. A lawyer? Well, that's no realistic goal for a nigger boy." Malcolm was through. That broke him. Malcolm was through with it all. He was through with trying. Malcolm gave up on school, he gave up on being good, and he gave up on the state of Michigan. So Malcolm became a slickster, a hipster. Now pool halls and bars and nightclubs were his main hangouts. And his career became number running, pimping, dope dealing, and boosting his way through life in New York, Boston, and elsewhere until at the age of 22, he landed in prison for robbery. But ironically, prison was Malcolm's saving grace, because when he was released from prison at age 27, Malcolm Little had educated himself by taking correspondence courses, by copying pages from a dictionary, and reading books from the prison library. He mastered philosophy. He mastered history, sociology, and anthropology and psychology. But most importantly, Malcolm became a follower of the Nation of Islam, the NOI, which advocated clean living, and they advocated many of the principles of Marcus Garvey and the idea that white people were devils. The same devils that put on hoods and attacked his family's home. The same devils that murdered his father. The same devil that told him that he was a nigger and he could not be a lawyer. That's right. So a member of the Nation of Islam, Malcolm changed his name. He changed his surname to X, which for NOI members symbolized the true African name that they could not never know. So by the mid-50s era, Malcolm was extremely articulate. He was very charismatic and he was self-educated. He became the spokesman for the Nation of Islam based in New York. Well, you know the rest of the story. So when you hear about Malcolm X and his militant views, when you hear recordings of his speeches, just know and understand that Malcolm X was made by the hate and racism of America. He was made by the devastation America forced on his young life just for being black in America. But the genius of Malcolm was birthed by the Nation of Islam. Malcolm was a perfect example of a self-made man, a product of America's injustices. This is the story of young Malcolm that no one told you. This is the truth of what terrors America put on his family, and the truth of how the Nation of Islam saved him. Malcolm was self-taught. With discipline and pure determination, he educated himself. He didn't say that the man held him down. He didn't use worn-out excuses of why not. And it came to pass. His genius came out. And the same thing can happen today. It can be duplicated. No one stops us from picking up a book or learning anything. There's no excuse anymore, my people. And this is a quote from Malcolm X. This is what Malcolm said, and I quote. He said, "Education is an important element in the struggle for human rights." He said, "It's the means to help our children and our people rediscover their identity and thereby increase their self-respect." He said, "Education is our passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for the future today." So if you don't understand the concept of learning that Malcolm X stood for, then you should not wear him on your t-shirt. Like, subscribe, think, and read. This is a Marologic channel.